Long before Lara Croft raided tombs and Nathan Drake was among thieves, there was Edward Randy, one of gaming's earliest Indiana Jones ripoffs. He was the star of the oft-forgotten 1990 arcade gem The Cliffhanger, where he fights through a dieselpunk version of the 1930s in an effort to rescue a girl named Charlotte and recover the valuable Prism Stone. Turn back now if you don't want to know what happens next, because today we're going to spoil the story and ending of The Cliffhanger Edward Randy by Data East. This is Game Over, the early years. It's the 1930s and the nefarious army general Dark Ogre has an evil plan. He's going to use the Prism Stone to create a weapon of mass destruction and unleash it against his rivals. But just before that could happen, an elderly scientist escapes with the Prism Stone and hides it with his granddaughter Charlotte. But that's not gonna stop Dark Ogre, and his hunt for the stone forces the young girl to seek refuge with a teenage boy named Edward Randy, who just wants to go on a first date with his girlfriend, Jennifer. But there's no time for love, Dr. Jones, so our hero grabs his whip and fights to keep Charlotte safe. This starts in the most exciting way possible, with a crazy boat chase. Eddie tries to keep the driver protected as he speeds down the river and is accosted by Dark Ogre's Nazi-esque army. This is where we get our first taste of not only the side-scrolling action, but also the bits where we're sailing straight towards the camera. The cinematic nature of The Cliffhanger is going to be front and center the entire way through. This all leads to the General's train, where he's captured Charlotte and demands the Prism Stone in return. Edward accepts the trade, but the adventure is far from over. Hot on the trail of the airship, Eddie jumps into a car and drives after it. This is a harrowing car chase that ends with an epic battle on the hood of a truck. He eventually gets the upper hand and steers the semi towards the mines, where he not only has to deal with aggressive guards and poorly constructed platforms, but also this robot hand that hints at a greater threat. Those giant hands are part of this weird experimental robot creature. Eddie swats fireballs away with his whip, all while Dark Ogre gets further and further away with the Prism Stone. But don't worry about that, because Edward has a plan. He's gonna board a biplane and catch up with the Ogre's slow-moving airship. Of course, he does this in the most Edward Randy way possible, which involves standing on the wing of the plane and taking out the enemies all around him. Yeah, this seems dangerous, especially when that killer robot returns to take its revenge. Thankfully, young Indiana Jones is able to escape the robot, but not before the biplane he's standing on catches fire. He's now forced to jump between the different airplanes, which is made so much harder when the lightning storm shows up out of nowhere. He eventually gets back to his damaged plane, only to be forced to fight yet another robot with giant arms. We win, but clearly our little biplane is not long for this world. Edward's only chance for survival is to board Dark Ogre's jet, where the two get into a lengthy hand-to-hand fight above Europe's rolling fields. He has a massive gun, but don't worry, you have a whip, so the odds are just about even. Eddie eventually comes out on top, and this is what happens next. Cliffhanger is not an especially long or deep game, but I'm a big fan of this ending. This is a good example of a game setting something up at the very start and then paying it off at the end in a fun and unexpected way. Sure, Edward saves the day and probably stops a tyrannical army from using a weapon of mass destruction, but his girlfriend is understandably pissed that he stood her up. That's a great punchline in more ways than one. The only real complaint about the story is that it's a shame that it wasn't set up better. The Cliffhanger falls into a lot of the same traps that you saw in those old arcade games where they speed through the story in order to get to the good stuff. I have a hunch the story would have been more fleshed out had this been a console game. I feel like it just needs a little bit more setup to Edward, Jennifer, and even Charlotte than we got. But look, it's pretty easy to fill in a lot of those gaps on your own. No matter what, the Cliffhanger Edward Randy is a great little action game with some of the most exciting level design you'll ever see. It's a shame Eddie didn't go on more adventures. He's really good at the whole saving the world thing. Dating, on the other hand, not so much. Hey, thanks for watching this episode of Game Over, The Early Years. If you liked what you saw here, then you should know that we post new episodes every Monday. Now here's the question I have for you. What's the most exciting game you've ever played? You can go ahead and define that however you want. Let me see your picks in the comments below. In other news, this week is going to be packed with reviews, including my take on NeoCab, Candleman, Cubics, and more. While you wait for those embargoes to lift, I strongly recommend you click that subscribe button and support what we're doing here. Until then.